Okay, good morning. My name is Andres Felipe Perdomo Diaz, and today I'm going to present about the Watergate scandal. First, I'm going to talk about a little summary of what is the Watergate scandal about. Okay, the Watergate scandal began early in the morning of June 17 of 1972. Five thieves were arrested for stealing documents at the headquarters of the Democratic National Committee located in the Watergate buildings in Washington, D.C. This was not an ordinary robbery. The prowlers were connected to the President Richard Nixon's re-election campaign. The president did everything he could to cover up his crimes, but he finally resigned on August 9 of 1974 after reporters Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein of the Washington Post found information which evidently showed that the president was guilty. Okay, now I'm gonna talk about more deeply how was the develop of all the Watergate breaking. In 1972, the country was divided because of the Vietnam War. The President Nixon created a strategy which consisted of sending members of his re-elected committee to carry out illegal espionage. These five members of his committee will have to enter to the headquarters of the Democratic Party and steal copies of top secret documents. However, on June 17 of that same year, these five thieves were caught by the police. It was not immediately clear that these thieves were connected to the president, but although suspicions arose when detectives found copies of the White House number. In August of that same year, the President Nixon spoke out and said that he swore that neither he nor his White House staff were involved in that robbery. Okay, so what happened next? Nixon present a lot of obstruction of justice. Later, it emerged that Nixon was not being honest. Within days of the robbery, for example, he arranged to provide the thieves with hundreds of thousands of dollars in secret money. Nixon and his aides then devised a plan to instruct the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, to prevent the FIB from investigating the crime. This was a more serious crime than the robbery, and it was an abuse of the presidential power and a deliberate obstruction of justice. Okay, after that, everything for Nixon was going down. Washington Post reporters Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein had begun to suspect that a larger plan was underway. Several members of the White House and Nixon's own assistants later testified against him. The reporters discovered that Nixon had secretly taped every conversation that took place in the Oval Office. If prosecutors could get those tapes, they would have proof of the president's fall. Nixon struggled to protect those tapes during the summer and fall of 1973, but he finally was unsuccessful. Okay, and finally, on August 5 of 1974, Nixon released the tapes which provided the undeniable evidence of his all complicity in the Watergate crimes. Nixon resigned in disagreement on August 8 of that same year of his presidential charge. And the 6 weeks later, after the Vice President Gerald Ford took his presidential charge, he forgave the ex-president Nixon for any crime he committed while he was performing the presidential charge. Then His accomplices were not so lucky, and they were convicted of very serious crimes and sent to prison. Uh, his abuse of presidential power had a lasting effect on the American political life, creating an atmosphere of mistrust in every American and all the politics. And these are my references. Thank you so much.